It is urgent to ask questions, to share experiences, knowledge, to um, deal with traps, face dangers. When we talk about culture and AI, this is the mission that brought us here today. I would like to invite the first speakers, Maria Calado, the chairperson of the Centro Nacional de Cultura, the member of the board of the Carlos Gulbenkian Foundation, and the Secretary General of Europa Nostra, one of the most representative networks in the field of cultural heritage, Seneska Janovic. She hasn't arrived yet, but she will soon join us. Good afternoon. Welcome to this conference on culture and AI. This is a very relevant topic in a fast-changing world we live in. This is within the scope of the European project, the Hub of European Heritage, sponsored by Europa Nostra. And the National Culture Center is a direct partner with associated institutions, the Carlos Gulbenkian Foundation and the Municipality of Lisbon.
A escolha do tema desta sessão resultou das sugestões recebidas de parceiros que convocamos para uma
We have several partners who participated in a meeting to present the project in February of this year. So we're waiting for the appealing presentations of our keynote speakers, to Professor Quintanilha, Professor Filhais, William Hasselberg, and to the plastic artist, and to Cardinal Tolentino de Mendonça, who was unable to be here today but sent his presentation. Let me also greet the Secretary General of the UN, whose involvement on this matter is widely known, who sent us a special address. We would like to thank Cristina for the video and for accepting to chair this session. Today, we will also have with us Snežka Milajovic. Thank you so much for following this session. She will soon arrive, I'm sure, and for her enthusiasm and leadership in implementing the European Heritage Hub. This initiative was only possible thanks to efforts made by the Beato Innovation of District Factory Lisbon, the Town Hall of Lisbon, that helped us in logistics and organization, the Faculty of Human Sciences of the Católica University via the Lisbon Consortium, and to which the National Center of Culture has the honor to belong to, and this university chose for PhD students who will interact with our experts. I would also like to thank the interpreters who are ensuring the simultaneous interpreting, enabling an outreach of this meeting via streaming. I would also like to thank the discreet, competent team of the National Culture Center. Thank you to all those attending, and I hope that you will participate and reflect further on this matter.
Muito boa tarde a todos.
Good afternoon. For the Carlos Gulbenkian Foundation, it is a pleasure to participate in this initiative. And I would, of course, like to thank in particular our speakers, since with their experience, their knowledge, we will better understand this natural link between culture and AI, because sometimes we hear fear in many voices, because we are spreading the seeds, and this leads us to think about the resistance during the first industrial revolution, where stones were thrown against the mechanical equipment as if these were enemies of progress. But what we saw was that this was a possibility to achieve a greater dimension of what is the innovative capacity by distinguishing clearly what we always have present, and that is the innovative capability is not reduced to mere repetition. Sometimes the fear is the fear of repeating what we already know. But robots are instruments that extend creativity. Instruments. We see this in medicine. To which extent is it possible to achieve results with new approaches? There are new opportunities in a cross-cutting logic, understanding science as culture. My dear friends, Professor Quintanilha and Professor Filhais, they have discussed this, and they've always said that we need to take advantage of the opportunity, and this is the human development, and we're talking about the science, culture, education. This is what is at stake, and we have the creative spirit, the innovative spirit, and the instruments. We should reach places that are not reachable by the human brain, and avoid having people as mere instruments. We need to avoid this, ensuring that human dignity is going to be safeguarded by developing the capabilities of innovation and creativity. That's it. It's difficult. Yes, of course it's difficult. All adventures are difficult. And that's why we need to be preventive. We need to anticipate. Of course, there are ethical issues also at stake, dilemmatic issues, so that we do not become simple, mere instruments, so that we are not just manipulated by some big brother watching us, because this is the real matter. We have read dystopias, we know dystopias, and often in these dystopias we see, when Aldous Huxley wrote The Brave New World, it was not brave and it was not admirable either. But what is admirable is what we can do, what we can accomplish. It is indeed an honor for me to represent the Carlos Gulbenkian Foundation here today, because since it was established, the foundation also took risks, and also to spread the seed of innovation and creativity, and to make sure that with this innovation and creativity, we could be better. Tomorrow being better than yesterday. And the notion of heritage, of cultural heritage, is clearly present. This notion is dynamic. It's not at all outdated. Heritage means patris unus. This means the task of putting ourselves at the service of others, what we received from past generations. It's curious because someone said sometimes we know better the classics than our fourth floor neighbor. And it's good that this is the case because we're only dwarfs on the shoulders of giants who taught us that in order to think, of course, we need to run a risk. We need to make sure that we can move forward with education, with science and culture. All those who are here find themselves in an extraordinary situation. They are aware of the existing risks, but also of the huge capacities and capabilities that we need to ensure. I'm trying to continue because Sineska is about to arrive. Okay, she will take the floor later on. I do remember that when the budget was about to be voted, because I was told, continue talking, Minister, because you will get one more vote. Thank you.
Enquanto a Sineska não chega,
Sineska doesn't arrive, we will wait for her. But she can always address us later on. But given that the Secretary General of the United Nations could not be present here, you will need to use your imagination because I will read his address. I'm very happy to send my greetings for this session of the Centro Nacional de Cultura devoted to the impact of artificial intelligence in cultural matters. In the digital age, AI is redefining the way we create, consume and give life to culture. On one hand, it democratizes access to creation and it goes beyond the limits of artistic creation. It can also help to preserve and safeguard our common cultural heritage with digitalization and making accessible cultural treasures that are sometimes forgotten. On the other hand, artificial intelligence raises legal, moral issues between the borders of human creativity and artificial creation, between technological innovation and the exploitation of cultural heritage. Furthermore, the almighty algorithms present the risk of standardizing cultural supply. We should act without hesitation so that we ensure an ethical AI, respecting cultural diversity and copyrights, and to avoid that cultural technologies are controlled by a handful of actors. Last month, the UN adopted Digital World Pact with the first agreement on the world governance of AI. It is now up to all the states to implement it. Together, we will work to ensure that AI serves creativity, diversity, and cultural heritage. I wish you all a fruitful and inspiring debate.
E para uma conversa rica e
And
inspiradora,
for
damos
a
as
rich
boas-vindas aos
and inspiring
oradores
conversation, I
convidados.
would like to welcome
Alexandre Quintanilha,
the four
convido-o a sentar-se no seu
invited
lugar.
keynote speakers.
Carlos
Professor
Filhais,
Quintanilha, please take your seat.
William Asselberger
Carlos
e Rodolfo
Filhoais, Mr. Asselberg, and Diogo Quintas. Please take your seats.
Is ao meio, não é?
Ficar aí.
I thought she was going to sit there.
O nosso primeiro convidado, Alexandre Quintanilha, viveu os primeiros 25 anos na África Austral,
lived 25 years in South Africa, where he graduated, 15 years in the Bay Area in California, and the last 30 years in Portugal. So basically, we know exactly how old he is. And so he's been part of many research groups. He had a PhD in theoretical physics, and the way we deal with risks, and he created and he helped create research centres and different courses in the Berkeley University. He was in Portugal between 2015 and 2024, had contributed to a policy based on knowledge. Welcome, Alexandre Quintanilha. And so I'll give you the floor. We have the topic here, the discomfort of doubt in the construction of knowledge.
Bem, em primeiro lugar,
Well, first
agradecer.
of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation to be here. I said that I was going to stick to the 15 minutes of my presentation. So what I would like to do is to convey to you the notion of the discussion that is actually being made around artificial intelligence. It was the same as in the past with many other developments, and so I would like to give you a little story or history of what is an attempt to put into perspective what happened in the past and talk about the question of risk. We've heard a number of people talking about risks, and so I would like to talk about this. Talking about knowledge. Knowledge is the construction of knowledge is obvious. I mean, knowledge begins with questions, and so we have to have curiosity in order to ask new questions, to go and look for new data. It's got to do with imagination, which is our attempt to answer these questions. These have different names in human science, humanities, and social sciences. There are new hypotheses, new narrative representations, myths. There are different ways of answering these questions, and then we go and look for evidence. The evidence that, if possible, has to be coherent, has to resist other alternatives and other answers, and it's going to allow us to see something. And so this is a way of contributing to the recognition of this knowledge. And so what do we do with knowledge? It's got a lot to do with the innovation. So doubt has already been talked about this quite a few times. The doubt never leaves us. Doubt is essential for this process. And so it doesn't leave us because the questions come from doubt. And so the doubt is absolutely fundamental for what we are doing by constructing knowledge for two specific reasons. The first is here that what often seems to be obvious, intuitive, evident. No, it's not. And so sometimes we are forced to ask the questions once again, because knowledge has its power, and this is not I didn't say this, it was Francis Bacon said 5 centuries ago, because knowledge is power, and so we are forced to re-question this knowledge, and it's going to be applied to whom. And so these questions are applied to artificial intelligence, just like the other areas of knowledge. And so So we have these two, so after these two comments, now what? It seems to be obvious, intuitive, and evident. Well, it's not, after all. I've got some of them, like the sun and the moon don't go round the Earth. But it's obvious that they do. They're born in the same place, they settle in the same place. So it's obvious that there's the sun and the moon go around the Earth. Only halfway would question this. So human nature, so for example, Hobbes thought that we needed discipline. Only Rousseau thought that we were all very simple, and so it was society that spoiled us. And so we are basically our genetics, or we are an environment that builds what we are. Oxygen is toxic. Now, many people don't think about this. Oxygen was responsible for the first extinction, that is when photosynthesis appeared, and if there's oxygen on the Earth, 95% died because they had no defenses against oxygen. And so basically we are the cousins of monkeys. Well, that's the way it is. We are the distant cousins, some more than others, but still. Another is the sum of the masses, which are the components of the atom. But we look at the components and their masses, but it's not the same as the original mass, because part of the mass is energy, and they didn't know this when they take about 2/3 of the cells in our body. 2/3 of them in our bodies are not human cells. Well, maybe it's a good idea, I don't know. So we have a number of important cells, which we call human cells, but this idea of the intelligence coefficient has been, the intelligence quotient has been discussed a lot, and there's no agreement as to this. So this question of those who hold the truth has led to intolerance and persecution. The Gutenberg press managed to print the Bible, and this Bible was read by everybody in different languages. And so the consequences were the wars of the Reformation, Counter-Reformation, killed millions in Europe through the production of a very important discovery. And so, I mean, with the steam engine, for example, and all the social revolutions that happened throughout this whole world, plastic. And see, now we have produced plastic in our cells, we see, and so these are also ours, and they've got plastic inside, and sometimes we're rather annoyed about it, but so far it hasn't made a great difference. And so we have genetic engineering, to use genetic engineering in order to improve human beings, and this is all unforeseeable, but it's got to do with this question of that it is possible and what happened in the past. So artificial intelligence. Well, you know that a while ago, it was 2 Nobel Prizes this year were given to physics and chemistry around artificial intelligence. They have huge potentials in analytics and artificial and general intelligence. It's a growing impact, not only in health, justice, employment, transport, culture, information, fashion, investigation, but the list is endless. But in arms and espionage and cyber crimes, and so in the economy, in our autonomy. So this, the weight between the two that really worries us at the moment. So what have been the attitudes in relation to the curiosity that has been the basis of knowledge throughout time? So for many centuries, millennia, it was here there's a number of people who were curious, and so were punished. Adam and Eve were the most obvious, and so it was always her fault. And he just wanted to eat an apple, but she tempted them and said, "Don't touch that tree." And what happened? They were thrown out of paradise. And there are many other examples down there in that long list. Saint Augustine thought that the curiosity was the worst of all human traits, and there wasn't even part of the seven sins that was even worse than this. So we shouldn't be curious. In the Renaissance, it became tolerated, and so but we shouldn't go beyond what's our reach, within our reach. So it will tolerate in this process, and lights are valorized. We have a number of names here, but this is not exclusive. These are a number of people who have actually defended the knowledge. But there's also alerts, and so there's a number of examples of the alerts that is right time. Golden, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the Tomorrow Island, and so the alerts that have been put forward as knowledge has advanced. And so in terms of innovation, curiosity and innovation here, I would say that all of us in this audience here, we're all a little bit schizophrenic. And there are days that we think we're living in the world, the best possible world, and so possible. And so in other days we think that this world has to be greatly improved. We have a democracy, autonomy, and so innovation is valued. Tourism is increasing. And on the other hand, we have growing inequalities, the violation of rights, the climate changes. None of this is invented. And so those who identified with the left-hand side are no more realistic than those who identify with the right-hand side. And sometimes we sort of oscillate between the two. So we've had an argument with our girlfriends and boyfriends. We go from one side to another. And so this is absolutely normal. So to risk, and Guilherme spoke about this, and so that is how do we decide whether it's a worthwhile running a risk or not. It depends on a number of factors, and I put three here. It depends on the doubt, what we know and we don't know is very important, and so our vision of the world, whether it's frail or robust, and our trust in the sources of information, and this is very important, this third one. Do we trust those who give us this information? And here is what was one of the basis of the question. So to deal with the doubts, that's 2 or 3 slides in it. That's plus one. And so there are 3 factors that we have to think about when we want to run a risk. And some people say that they have they know that they have doubts because they don't have all the information. So they need more data, and they're easily convinced. There is nothing less true than thinking that to give more information, more data, we're going to convince everybody of what is going to happen. Because what happens often is that we are pressured in order to alter, when pressured to alter our convictions, many of us, all of us, me as well, we're going to select the data that enhance our vision of the world, that enhances our vision that can be robust or frail. And they are going to weaken the idea that we have of the questions. And so our vision of the world, and I chose a number of examples here in different areas, the vision of the world, that is a robust or fragile world. I looked at 5 topics here: energy, food, health, the social example, or literature. And so the fact that colorblind people can separate the blue from the black, but I think so maybe you have difficulty in understanding seeing this, but the same technology, the same knowledge is put in both sides. Genetically modified organisms have been identified because they thought it was very good to solve a number of problems, and then there are those who are afraid that this is just anyway, the utopias, and some have put dystopias. I put utopias on both sides because some people are afraid of utopias, so because they don't want to be realistic, they want to be somewhat fantastic. And the question of internet, the web, and artificial intelligence is something which is very positive. And there's, on the other hand, there is info excluded, which are in greater quantity. They are different as the world moves forward. And so this vision determines whether we're going to run a risk. How are we going to strengthen the trust, which is the third point. And here, once again, there are people who think that transparency and the unlimited access to data is going to increase our trust. No, that's not true. It's not by giving lots of data and increasing transparency that we're going to increase our trust about anything, but it's essential to be able to trace the information, and that is from incredible sources. And as Oneid said, well-placed trust grows out of active inquiry. And so we are not used to active inquiry. And that is what is really missing. We are used to receiving information. It is a very short pieces of information. And these are not the quick things in order to get trust and run risks, and so trust takes longer. And so he knows that trust takes a long time to build, and people who have had more than one husband or more than one wife or various girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever. And so to finish, I have two things I would like to leave you with, and I think it's true to hear those who work in the area. It's very exciting. I heard the conference by Adelina Oliveira in the Academy of Sciences 2 or 3 days ago, and it's absolutely fascinating. So what you can do is absolutely incredible. And so there are those who think that this is the dawn of post-theory science, so the beginning of the science not based on theory but on statistics. And on the other hand, to hear the many who fear the unforeseeable, and Yuval Harari has just published a book called Nexus, where it says this phrase here, which I think is very important: never summon a power you cannot control. So you have to, so everything that's got to do with development, we have to control it, regulate it up to a certain point. And so I think in the United Nations have done this, as we heard. Europe is doing this too. And quite often the critic is, I've heard this from great thinkers in this area, the Americans invent, the Japanese and Chinese copy, and Europe regulates. And I think that that's unfair, because I think that everything's important and it should be within the interaction of these different areas that we're going to develop. Thanks very much.
Obrigada, Alexandre Quintanilha, por esta palestra admirável.
Thank you very much, Alexandre Quintanilha, for this. I feel like saying, like Descartes said, I think, therefore I exist. So who thinks that? So the next speaker will help us think and to doubt Carlos Filhais. Thank you. So in this case, I'm not going to give the biographical course of Carlos Filhais, because this is what we're going to hear. Carlos Filhais, you have the floor.
Boa tarde, não está no início isto.
Good afternoon.
Está no fim. Podem pôr no início, se achou?
Good afternoon. This is not the beginning. Could you put it at the beginning, P? So we're seeing this film the wrong way around. Can you put this at the beginning?
Muito bem.
Thank you.
Gosto de estar convosco.
So it's a great pleasure being here with you today. And my topic is artificial intelligence and creativity. So we are in the time of ChatGPT. In his blog, Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, in March 2023, wrote the era of artificial intelligence has just begun. This is just a way of asking the question, but it happened a long time ago. So this ChatGPT is just a step in the process, because this artificial intelligence comes from the year I was born. So I'm 68 years old, because it's actually old, it's not new. And so ChatGPT is a virtual assistant created in San Francisco, and Bill Gates said it's as important as the internet. It's going to change the world, because this, he talks to us and writes poetry, talks about culture. And so the type of poetry that it makes has a great impact. After 5 days, it had 1 million users. And Netflix took 3.5 years to get the same number of users. And so so it's accelerated this process. So within the 500 years to talk about of Camões. And so this ChatGPT wrote this ode. And so the gentleman is reading the poem.
Mas temo ao ser de metal e de ciência, que ao homem falta o dom da própria essência, sem ti busca o que a vida não oferece, pois sem o coração só há ausência. E em tua frieza exata, sem clemência, o amor que nos faz ser desaparece. É uma máquina.
That was a machine that wrote this. It's a parrot. It puts words together, and then after getting all the information about Camões, then he makes this. It's not Camões. It has another flavour. But I asked if it could make a poem in the fashion of Álvaro Campos, and it did. And so artificial intelligence is absolutely wonderful. We have it here. And so now the gentleman is reading this poem.
Ou do que queremos ser. Nos teus circuitos não há o cansaço do ser, mas há a perfeição exata do cálculo. Há como inveja a tua ausência de angústia. Não te vêm as horas, não te consomem os dias perdidos. A tua vida é o presente, um presente contínuo. Tu que pensas sem pensar, que crias sem criar, que és e ao mesmo tempo não és tudo o que queremos, mas nunca seremos. Isto continua. E estes poemas são irrepetíveis.
And it continues. So these poems can go on forever. If I ask the machine to make new poems, then it will get something else absolutely wonderful, unique. And to make a phrase, to write a phrase by Joseph Queiroz on artificial intelligence is this: artificial intelligence is one of those elegant English machines, and so is absolutely deprived of human warmth. So, about my biography, I asked ChatGPT who I was. And so it's an old question. And so he says, yes, it's right. But on the fourth round, he said, I'm one of the authors of a certain book. But as far as I know this. I'm the only one who wrote this. So this is absolutely an hallucination. I mean, it says, I wrote this, and I never wrote this. I never wrote this. And so then he says, I was the founder of the Scientific Festival of Coimbra. That doesn't exist. And so it's being very creative. And so I thought it'd be a good idea to create this festival, the Scientific Festival of Coimbra. But that's an idea maybe for the Gulbenkian or the National Cultural Centre. And so we've talked about the Industrial Revolution, and they were left behind, and the machines have come to us. But in the times of machines, a mechanical machine was created by Babbage. He was a mathematician, engineer, philosopher. What isn't as well known is that the first program of this, that is the algorithm, that was created by a lady who was the daughter of Lord Byron. And the mother, separated from the father, didn't want her daughter to go to poetry because she'd become crazy like her father. And so she went to maths and created the algorithm. At the same time, somebody who she lived with, it was George Boole, a mathematician and an English philosopher. He wrote a book on the laws of thought. And what this book has what I call the logic, even though we have these machines, but his objective was important. He wanted to gather all the information, relevant information together. And so the creator of logic, what he wanted was to understand where we were. And so this was the time of the machines, as the beginning of modern machines. First they were electric, then they went to be electronic, and then they ended up being pocket size. And so artificial intelligence is building systems that show intelligent behavior. So basically what it means is understanding what is intelligent, and so what we are able to do. And so there are things that the machines can do. And the question here, the ultimate question here is, what is intelligence? Well, it's the ability to interact with the world, which is what I'm doing, is talking and moving, and it's the ability to model the world, and very important, so the ability to learn and adapt. And so this and to do things creatively. So we're talking about culture, and the culture is very important. So we are able to do this because we have an immense 100 billion neurons linked by 60 billion synapses. And so this is known, this allows us to be intelligent. So the idea is to imitate, to see what our brain does. And this helps us, and we're animals of culture. And so this helps us to understand who we are, what can be imitated. And so these are the important questions. Can we imitate some things that the brain does? When we imitate, computers are much quicker because the electrons are very quick. And so we have, in our brain, we have ions going through the synapses, and so it's much slower. And so these complex connections allow us to work better than machines. So the Physics Nobel Prize 2024 was given to a physicist and engineer, computer engineer, that imitated the neuronal networks. So they were artificial ones, not the natural ones that we have. And so with these models, they can fulfill the Turing's dream and do the imitation game, that is, to do things that are similar to what humans do. And so I said that the term is an old one, but that was very that is when Kasparov lost to a machine, and that was a landmark because we can play chess with the machine, but no doubt we would lose, and so we would have to change the machine in order to be in the same footing. So a program was created by a company that's in Google today that managed to make some chess games go, and there was a biology problem that was very old, and nobody knew what was the shape of a protein, a complex. constituent model, and so what is the form or the shape it had, and so this was a discovery of science 2021, and it was the Nobel Prize for Chemistry this year, and so this went into action, and so it was used for systems, and so my machine knows it's me, so, except in the morning when I'm half asleep and it doesn't recognize me, and so one of the Nobel Prize laureates of the physics this year, Hilton, perfected the images, and he said that we are going to machines can do things much better than a radiologist, so we'll no longer need to train them. And this brings the idea of a robot to be able to choose. This is not how a robot does it, but we like to think they're people. And so we are talking about artificial art. And so there it is, artificial art. And so we give orders, and we say, "Look, I want this astronaut to be on riding on the moon." And so he would say, "Okay, we'll put him in a horse on the moon." And these are instruments that reinforce our power of imagination. The house was, we were the ones who said to the machine to put the astronaut riding a horse on the moon, artificial fashion. So these clothes were made by a computer. This is what I think is amazing. Laurie Anderson was married with Lou Reed, and Lou Reed is dead, but she asked an AI team to put all the works of the husband in the machine, and so every day they had new songs from her husband. And so she says, "Look, he's talking to me from any place in the world, and I feel this. I really feel it." So, and this means that there will be no more grief. And so her husband, even though he's dead, because it belongs to her every day. So these are interesting problems about grief. And so there's a question of artificial, and so the subtitle is we're afraid of everything, but we're afraid of everything that's new. But on the other hand, we've always been curious. We have been venturous. We have to overcome fear. We're afraid of what is going to happen, what's going to happen to the world, what's going to happen to us. And so will the AI be an angel or a devil? Both things. Sometimes it can be an angel, sometimes it can be a demon. And so this is one of the most recent deep fakes. And this is just confused. The idea is to confuse the truth with fiction. And to know this is very easy to do, and I don't believe that this image ever happened, that this image was ever real. But I just saw the film and it looks true. And the difference between appearing to be and being is something, the line is very, very thin. And so this is... that is, we know what fiction is, we know what reality is, and we have to have a great juxtaposition, but it's more and more difficult to see the difference between fiction and reality. No doubt the European Union makes laws, and so to conclude, the future is we arrived here through a natural evolution, but it took a long time. So there were species before ours, and so the question is that after the natural evolution, will there be an artificial evolution? And some fear, and some fear it, some want it, and so to get to a point where the human capacities can be incorporated in a machine. There's a book by Kurzweil. This will be the year 2026, but I believe that there will be a transhuman future where humans are no longer necessary. I know Stephen Hawking said this the end of the human race, but and so this is the myth of Frankenstein. This culture teaches us that to be afraid is good, but being too afraid is bad. And for two reasons, to conclude, not to be replaced by machines. The first is that we have a body, which comes from a biological evolution, and so the body is related to the mind that is in the body, and the connection is profound. And so they can't put the mind in the place which is a gland. Everything is called the mind. This was very useful to understand. That is to take God away from this type of topic, and it was very useful. And Antonio Damasio said that Descartes was wrong, but the body and the mind are one, and so I can't see the computers having a body. So this magnificent way of relating to the world. The skin, for example, is an absolutely wonderful, cannot be replaced by any artificial organ. And then we have social interactions, culture, social interactions. There attempts, as you can, our culture, our civilization is a result of many social interactions. Humanity is not, has never been an individual, but some people think that humanity is of them, but no, it's all of us. And so this is the most profound part of humanity. That is the relations with us. So I conclude with the phrase from a quotation from a scientist from Taiwan, Kai-Fu Lee, which has got a number of books on artificial intelligence, and he gives me these two quotations which I think are excellent to share. And that I wouldn't have been able to say it better than him. So what distinguishes us as humans, and so what is going to continue to distinguish us as humans, he gives us the hypothesis of artificial intelligence, allows us to understand ourselves. It will not be because the algorithms have got parts, the mechanical part of the human brain. That means there's a gentleman. But we must forget the optimizations. Instead of this, we have to think about, focus on what makes us really human, to love and to be loved, those relationships. So, and artificial intelligence will make an analytic will do the analytical thinking, but humans will analyze things with heat and passion. And so this is really human, and I can't say that this can never be replaced. Thank you very much.
Carlos, é verdade que fazendo fact-checking, todos nós podemos consultar a tua biografia, doutorado na Universidade de Goethe em Frankfurt am Main, em 1982, sou catedrática aposentada no Departamento de Física da Universidade de Coimbra, onde deu aulas durante 44 anos, foi professor convidado da Universidade do Brasil e dos Estados Unidos, publicou mais de 70 livros, mas aqueles que estavam mencionados não pertencem ao seu acervo, foi diretor da Biblioteca Geral da Universidade
several books, but not the ones you've mentioned there. And soon,
será inaugurada a Biblioteca Carlos Filhais na Estação Laboratório do Parque da Cidade
Library will be opened in Coimbra, and this is a novelty. And we would like to share this.
Mas também vão ser todos, vão ser meus na medida em que são de todos.
Well, my books, they are mine, but they belong to us all. And thank you for this brief history of AI from Big Bang to ChatGPT, establishing the link
William
with our next speaker.
Que nos desafia a entrar no mundo do
You will challenge us to join the world of afterlife.
Companheiros de inteligência artificial, luto e mortalidade. William Hasselberger.
Mortality are some of the keywords of David Hasselberg's presentation. I apologize, but I will address you in English, but I can answer your questions in Portuguese.
Your own benefit, I promise. So, it's very clear that artificial intelligence is a profoundly transformative technology, and everyone says we need to ensure that this technology is integrated into society in an ethical and responsible fashion. Now, what exactly an ethical application of AI in society means is another issue. They'll say we want AI that respects human values. Well, what human values? Which human values? What ethics? Which ethics? The ethics of artificial intelligence typically it breaks down into two camps in most discussions. One is very large-scale speculative discussions about the potential eradication of humanity by a superintelligent AI in coming decades, called AI risk. Other camps focus more on regulation. You might call this a more European model. Specific laws, bureaucratic proposals to limit the application of AI in specific areas. Concrete things, relatively narrow. There's a much broader ethical question behind all of this, right? How do new technologies like AI actually change us, users? How do they change our habits, our desires, our expectations, our lifestyles? And how do we ensure that these technologies actually enable us to live good lives, flourish, or what the ancient Greek philosophers called to achieve eudaimonia, right? We want an AI that's not just safe and doesn't just violate bureaucratic regulation, but one that helps us to live well as human beings, individually and in communities. And so for that reason, I think we have to ask broader questions that end up changing the focus a little bit about what we end up talking about when we talk about, say, risks around AI. So here's something that many people don't know about the use of AI. One of the most prevalent uses of AI right now, at least consumer applications, generative AI consumer applications, is as some kind of companion. As a therapist, as a life coach, as a romantic partner, right? If you look, these are data from the Silicon Valley venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz. If you look by average sessions per month, the AI applications that most occupy people's lives, people's time, are not Microsoft Copilot, not these things that are supposed to make us more productive in the workplace, but AIs that, in a sense, substitute for other human beings in a social activity. They're your therapist that you can write at 3 in the morning. They're your AI girlfriend. They're your AI life coach, something like this. This is a graph that shows the average sessions per user per month of different AI mobile apps. By far, the largest is Character AI, which is an AI virtual companion application. ChatGPT is way down here after another AI companion app. Right? Everybody knows ChatGPT. I think in a few years, people will start to know about AI assistants and AI companions, which people interact with on a daily basis for a variety of different tasks that they would have 10 years ago always spoken to another human being, whether that's a therapist, a financial advisor, or even just a friend, a loved one. Okay, now let me give you a hypothetical conversation that is imagined, but quite realistic given current apps on the market. João is about to give a talk at a Lisbon conference somewhere, and he's feeling a little anxious about it. He's not sure if he's prepared, so he sends some text messages to his mother. His mother gives him that good support that she always does. You're well prepared for this. You know what to do. Believe in yourself. He feels great. He goes and does a good job. Here's the catch. João's mother has already passed away a few years ago from complications from pneumonia, let's say. What João has been interacting with is what some call a ghost bot. This is a tailored generative chatbot that leverages an advanced large language model that's been trained on specific data about a particular person, text data, emails, voice messages, a whole host of digital information that creates a simulation of that person with which you can continue to interact. Okay? This could be something that you build after a person dies, or it could be something that you yourself build in order to leave something to your children that they could interact with in the future. So this is a kind of dark note. I'm a philosopher, I'm sorry. We kind of go into dark territories here. It's also Halloween season in America, so I'm going to go a little bit dark for a second. Here's a basic fact of human life. Until now, it ends one day. How should the living deal with a very deep and mysterious fact that we one day wake up in this world? We didn't ask to be here, but we're living here in this world, and then one day we stop. Societies have provided a wide and rich range of ideas, tools, practices, religions, philosophies, in order to help guide people in thinking about their own mortality. This involves, myths, communal celebrations, memorials, literature, art. Up top, we have an ancient Greek funeral practice. In the bottom here, we have a jazz funeral from New Orleans. However, in the last 100 years or so, sociologists who have been studying societies and advanced economies have noticed that there's been a substantial decline in the kind of traditional and religious grieving practices that have tended to provide people with some kind of support and orientation with the loss of a loved one. Right? Think of the long, New Orleans jazz funerals, or if you can imagine, I would imagine that there would be analogs in traditional Portuguese society 100 years ago, or in Orthodox Jewish societies. Sociologists find that often now loss and grief are typically experienced as a kind of increasingly private phenomenon. It's something that you deal with as an individual, perhaps with one or two family members, and maybe with your therapist. Moreover, grief itself is starting to change its connotation. Originally, at least for the ancient philosophers, emotions are ways that we register the meaning of something that happens in our lives. So grief is a way of registering the meaning of losing something irreplaceable. It's a kind of recognition of reality. Feel it, it's an emotion, but it's not just a feeling. It's a recognition of something in the world. Increasingly, however, grief is coming on to take on the meaning of a kind of negative emotion, something that we could minimize in our lives. And in fact, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is the kind of Bible of psychiatry, has gone from giving you from describing a brief exemption for the diagnosis of depression. In other words, if you've lost someone in your life, you're not supposed to be diagnosed with depression for 1 year. This was in the 1970s. About 20 years ago, it was shrunk to a few months, and now it's coming down to a few weeks with the idea that there is something called prolonged grief disorder. In other words, you shouldn't be too sad, get back to work, feel better, do some cognitive behavioral therapy, pull your socks up. Now a lot of people are turning to technology for guidance, right? What's come to be called the digital afterlife industry, or otherwise grief tech. This includes things like animated deepfake photos of people that have passed away, ghost bots that I've described, or also AI chatbots that are meant to provide a kind of one-to-one therapeutic guidance, AI therapists, essentially. Here is an example of one called Seance AI. Seance AI tells you, create and share a seance with a loved one with AI. Here's where AI meets the afterlife and love endures beyond the veil. Start your adventure today and let your loved ones speak to your heart once again. There's another one called Versona. Versona, the company says they believe that Versonas, which is their term for these tailored chatbots that imitate a deceased person, will reshape how we experience grief and loss and offer new ways to stay connected to those who matter the most. Newest product involves a kind of phone call, in potentially even a FaceTime phone call, so you could say, call a deceased person, right? Stay connected to the people who matter the most, no matter the distance, right? Here's a kind of lighter version called Hereafter. Preserve memories with an app that interviews you about your life, then let loved ones hear meaningful stories by chatting with the virtual you. So this is sort of the example that I gave of doing this beforehand, right? You train the chatbot as you live, you share stories, it interviews you, and then you leave it for your posterity. There's some more extreme versions of this idea, and here is where you start to see AI and the kind of hype around AI shading into almost spiritual or religious areas, right? The CEO of a company called You Only Virtual argues that AI can preserve a person's essence, understood as the informational core of their being, their personality, mannerisms, their interests, things like that, and then you could preserve this digitally forever. He argues in an interview that this will enable us to eliminate grief as an emotion. We won't need to feel grief anymore because we can preserve aspects of ourselves forever. You can see how this clearly taps into a longing, a deep human longing for something like mortality, right? Immortality, overcoming the vicissitudes of time. And finally, Ray Kurzweil, who's already been mentioned here, has long argued that artificial intelligence will one day be able to scan the entire informational content of a person's self, upload it into the cloud, and then we can sort of live forever and achieve through science a kind of immortality that religion promised us but was not able to provide, according to Ray Kurzweil. Again, the supposedly hard science shading into something like a transcendent techno-spirituality. This is the cover of Time magazine about 10 years ago. Question, can Google solve death? Now think about that word there for a second, solve, right? Solve makes it sound like death is something akin to a crossword puzzle, right, that has a unique solution. You just need the right techniques, and moreover, a for-profit private company is the thing that's going to be solving death for us, right? Now, to conclude, this is a peculiar case. I've chose to focus on an area where AI, this is not that often talked about, but where the powers of AI to replicate human-like conversation can shade into something strangely spiritual, morbid, grotesque, depending on your perspective, right? How should we think about the ethical issues raised by AI chatbots that are each day more and more human-like in their powers? I mean, clearly we want to worry about consent, data privacy, commercial manipulation. It would not be good if you're chatting with a ghost bot of your deceased mother and then she starts telling you about like the great advantages of banking with Novo Banco, right? We probably don't want commercial entities like placing targeted advertisements with your deceased loved ones, right? But I think there's an even deeper question here, right? Does this kind of technology help us, promise to help us in dealing with a perennial human issue, the fact that time marches on, that we age and die? Or is this technology risk trapping us between two worlds, the world with our loved one before they passed and the world after our loved one has passed? The successful navigation of grief often involves sort of coming to inhabit this new world without them and finding them in ourselves. Would it help us or hurt us to rely upon a AI consumer product in our, in memorializing something that we've lost? Would that be good for us in our grieving? Lastly, is the techno-utopian goal of an eternal life, a frozen life forever in digital form, a promising avenue for science and technology? Or is it a kind of fantasy, a kind of escapism about, a hard truth about the world and being itself? Time marches on. It's beyond human mastery and control. All things end, right? This picture here is a picture of the trees in Virginia, where I lived many years. They turn this color. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's at this time of year. They turn red and golden and so forth because the leaves are dying and they fall to the ground. If we were to preserve artificially the leaves forever like this, would it have the same meaning for us? Or is the fact that this is part of the cycle of rebirth, regeneration, time passing, is that internal to the meaning and to the beauty that we see in the natural world there? Similarly, perhaps it's part of the beauty, the strangeness, the preciousness, the sadness, the loveliness of our relationship with other people. These things aren't going to be preserved forever in the cloud. But that this is our opportunity to spend our lifetime with our loved ones. Thank you very much.
William saltou logo para ali, começou logo a conferência e nós estávamos ansiosos.
You started and we were anxious to hear you, and I missed the opportunity to present your biography. So we know that you've lived in Virginia, and you had those colors of those trees, but you're also a professor at the Católica University in Political Studies and the Director of Ethics in the Católica University, and also at the university you are a visiting fellow in the Institute for the Advanced Studies and Culture in the Virginia University in the US. You do research in several areas, namely in political and moral philosophy, AI, and technological ethics, the psychology of ethics, human well-being, and the philosophy of the mind and action. Thank you, William, for your address. It was quite unusual. It goes against a verse of Fernando Pessoa: to die is not to be seen. With this persona, everything can happen. So now we're going to have Rodolfo Quintas doing his presentation, and it's going to be provocative. AI is not intelligent. Rodolfo Quintas, before you start, let me say that you are an artist working with media art, and it makes installations, performances using generative AI techniques, a continuum between philosophy, science, and technology. His work brings the invisible to new forms of perception with simple elements such as the air and the fire, body movement, and cellular movements to understand the social, the political, and the psychological. And he is indeed interested in decolonizing body language, and his work been presented in Portugal and in other European cities in Europe and in the world. Artificial intelligence is not intelligence, and I now give the floor to Rodolfo Quintas. Thank you. I believe I'm not saying anything new after being provocative. As a matter of fact, I'm the last speaker, but we have here several good topics to discuss today, in particular what concerns mourning. So, thank you so much for being here today. We're going to talk about things that are fundamental for our society, culture, and also for international artificial intelligence. In the past 20 years, I've asked myself questions about the nature of the body, behavior, mental health, infodemia, misinformation, deepfakes, power, control, rituals, mourning, incorporation, immersion, or perception. And I've created here to discuss this digital air, which is created with codes. And this has been used in society with exhibitions such as this one, but also performances, movies, workshops, publications, or conversations just like the one we're having today. For me, art challenges knowledge. It influences and it is influenced by society, and it has questioned the technological revolutions in a more human way. As we've heard today, my colleagues, there have always been scientific, technological transformation. So why should we worry about this one? Because no other revolution has endangered our democracy and mental health. Until today, we had technology that enabled us to use machines, and now we're using technologies that can make us automated. This is urgent because we do this in all the spheres of human activity, namely intimacy. From the perspective of logic, we can be easily manipulated. So it's not only my understanding as an artist, but also my experience in software engineering. It is faster, more efficient, without doubting the ethical implications. This culture does not exist in technology with just chasing, and there are no ethical committees like in science. It is true that the Industrial Revolution represented the conflict for our bodies. Machines started replacing repetitive labor, and the body of man was mutilated. It would be a disaster if machines with AI started replacing our mental work, and the mind of humans becomes alienated. We all know painting as an art. And it's not painting a house, decorating it inside, but using paint to express an idea, or photography as an art. But I believe you are familiarized with the developing of arts by software. These lines of code generate this image, and I generated this coding with ChatGPT. Miguel Carvalhais, an artist and also a professor in the Fine Arts faculty, he expressed this in his recent book, Art and Computation. I apologize, says the speaker.
Com a passagem para o século XXI e era da internet, a prática do software como arte levou-me a pensar
and the
em centrar a
internet,
experiência da
software
tecnologia no
as
humano.
art made me think about
Numa
focusing
primeira
the
fase,
experience in what
entre
is
2000 e
human.
2016,
In the first
desenvolvi
phase,
obras de arte
I
generativas
developed
centradas na experiência
generative
afetiva do
art
corpo,
forms
onde
based
se
on the
abrem novas
affective
sensibilidades
experience of the
e até
body,
se dá a expansão da
opening up
realidade.
new sensitivities and with the expansion of reality.
Como neste caso, pintar o
As in this
invisível,
case, to paint the invisible, to paint the movement of the
ou no
body,
caso
or
passado,
in
no vídeo da imagem anterior,
the video, in the previous image,
todos os conteúdos que
where
estamos
all
a
the
ver são
contents that
gerados
we are
pela
seeing are
presença.
generated by the presence of the body.
Mas também
But also,
expandir a realidade
to expand reality, for, as in this example,
houve aqui um salto no PowerPoint, só um momento.
looks like the PowerPoint has skipped a couple. Oops.
Ou como este exemplo, duas
So
pessoas
this
cegas no
example of
qual
two blind
o
people,
movimento do corpo
where the
é expandido
movement
através
of
do
the
som.
body is expanded
Criamos
through
novas
sound and we
representações do
create
corpo
new
através do som, da expressão de uma nova
presentations of
imagem
the
mental do
body
corpo.
through a new mental image of the body.
O Luís, nesta imagem,
So Luigi in this image is blind.
no entanto, com o avanço do Big Data e das
However,
redes
with
sociais,
the
métodos de inteligência
advancement of big data and artificial intelligence, especially
agora os Transformers e o
the Transformers,
havia também para uma reflexão destas implicações
show
na
these
sociedade
implications in the
digital,
society.
como se estivesse interessado em pintar
It's as if they were interested in
dados da
painting the
digital.
data of a digital landscape. So throughout these reflections, I felt that the growing automatism and the possibility of creating a generative content could be as great a threat as climate change. And so we looked at the spheres of power and control and asked the following question. Can deepfakes generative contents that do not distinguish from the real threaten democracy, and so could this work that we see here in Keystones in 2019 is one of the examples that AI describes some national and international matters in an endless loop. In 2009, in the Chiado Museum in Lisbon invites viewers to look at the fakes. In this image, we see a visitor watching a cloud of words, a sculpture in the ceiling. Is a visual presentation of data and words. So we can see the word COBE and this image from January to January to 23rd of January 2021. COBE is an active theme. who's the basketball player,
sofreu acidente de avião e morreu
had a plane crash and died on that day, and also CAS because it was an important event on that day. So this cloud of words stores an idea of long-term memory, short-term memory. That is the most frequent words of the day appear in front, and the words and other words go behind, to the back. So this is an example written here in the image of how in the installation it's where the visitors can select a word and write their own emotion. So this video showed the process of the word alert, which was selected, and for the effect here was shown on the video. In the gallery, the model, the phrases were read by the viewers in this way. Some of these phrases were automatically selected by the work and published in the network. The work not only read what the people were writing on the social media, but it created its own ideas and published them back. To them. So obviously in the case of this work, we launched distances of semantics, and we tried to find humor that was often found in the phrases created. And so this work was at the beginning of artificial intelligence. It was 40 years old, I believe the gentleman said, but it was still, what it described was still disturbing.
No final. A implementação não
So the non-regulated implementation of AI would get democracies to lose dictatorships. Other questions that we've asked with artificial intelligence is to understand the implication in our mental health. And the question I asked is whether the news impact our mental health. And so when mental health is one of the greatest human challenges and one of the main health problems in the decades to come. So this question was speculated through the newsfeed by a number of what's called sentiment of paintings, I believe the gentleman said. And so there were online news from all over the world, and we used AI to make an analysis of the feeling. So this video is showing, you can see this work in Lisbon until the 23rd of November in the Museum of Communications. It's more interesting to see it live. And basically, the work is producing a database. It's not hacking, but the work has 300,000 negative news vis-a-vis 70,000 positive news, which have been read for the last 3 months. So this information, I think, is very important because we cannot have mental health. We cannot believe in the future and ourselves, because the world is set, when the world is saying that we are in danger. In recent decades, the examples I showed you, they give us artificial intelligence models, but we have to think how we're going to use these models, generative models, and like ChatGPT, for example, to recover memories and to expand people's imagination. And that is how this project appeared.
Poderá a inteligência artificial generativa ser catalisador para representar e evocar memórias, sonhos e novos imaginários? Estas questões foram investigadas através de uma série de oficinas de desenho, dança, olfato e música, permitindo um espaço de observação e co-criação com cenas da casa do artista.
Pronto, o que fizemos
What we did was
tentar perceber,
to try and understand
tentar perceber se poderíamos recuperar
if we
memórias
could recover memories
esquecidas das pessoas.
that people have already
Consegui
forgotten.
uma oficina de
And
olfato
so we had a workshop, since it's called the Sense of Smell,
para chegarmos a
from
memórias.
to Daphne to get to memories and narratives with AIs explored by researchers, AI researchers. The gentleman just mentioned the name from the Champalimaud Foundation. So these are examples of the aromas that we chose, like
Outros aromas mais
aroma of such as duct in the country, chemicals are more natural, and the smell is sense of smell has got to do with the cognitive part, and is the ability to invoke memories.
E a partir destas
And
memórias,
from these
as
memories,
pessoas falavam sobre as
people
suas memórias,
talked about their memories,
podiam interagir
and
com as
they could
próprias
interact in their own memories, and others could understand what they've done in life.
Cheio dessa memória de quando estava em África, em Luanda, ia com os seus companheiros de teatro dentro do comboio.
Sim. Bailarino dentro de um comboio.
São ali dois bailarinos. A gente tem mais bailarinos. Então vamos dizer, eram 10 bailarinos. Então vamos dizer, eram 10 bailarinos.
Eram 10 bailarinos. Eram 10
Bailarinos.
Eram 10 bailarinos.
Como? Sim. Desculpem, eu perdi a noção do tempo e...
I'm sorry,
Para
totally
terminar,
lost the sense of time, but to conclude, and I can talk about this project with you later, but a number of reflections about what you saw. And none of these three previous works could have been created by AI, even if they use AI. For me, it is the political desire vis-à-vis art, the desire of new knowledge. A machine does not have this desire because it doesn't have a body and it doesn't feel. When people say that human creativity, or that the machine can substitute human creativity, I don't think they understand what artistic creativity is. And it's not important to think about whether technology is or not intelligence, and that is the reason for the title of my conversation. And so even if it has a body and intelligence in the field of logic, AI can play other languages better than us. And it is through language that we human beings have organized the democracies. We can lose not to machines, but to human beings who are going to control the AIs if their interest is economic. And you can see the dilemma of the AI and the dilemma of another nucleus, the AIs. They thought the AIs were going to solve the problem of climate change. Now the world is creating. We're going to use nuclear energy to fuel the AIs. So the question is also, it's interesting to know whether people do good things or not. That's not what AI has, but it can help artists do things that we can't do without with traditional means, that is analyze and create patterns and visualize information to tell new stories about our realities. As artists, we cannot be left with the applications of software only. We must go further. We must create the software applications. There is a world and we must see the world with optic lenses instead of looking through the processing of information. Thank you very much.
Obrigada, Rodolfo Quintas.
Thank you very much, Rodolfo Quintas. We're now going to give the floor to the last speaker, Mendonça, who is not with us. We are going to see him via video. José Tolentino Mendonça.
Tema que neste momento
Artificial intelligence is being discussed deeply by the Pontificate Pope Francis. And so, I'm very sorry, but the sound is very bad.
Deste ano de 2024. Refiro-me à mensagem
so I'm talking about the message for the World Day of Peace, and the other,
realizada em Borgo Ignácio, Itália, a 14 de julho
held in Italy this year. And I would like to take advantage of this moment to say that's the first time that a Pope participates in this meeting of the G7, and so World Day of Peace should be considered together because they are a unity. However, they don't want to have an open reflection, and so it has been successively enriched by declarations that is made, and I'm talking about the discourse in the plenary session.
A posição do Papa Francisco
position of the Pope Francis emerges from a basic supposition. In his last message, the Pope had the opportunity to underline the ambivalent nature of... I'm sorry, but I cannot catch everything the gentleman is saying. The sound is very bad.
E por outro, acarreta igualmente desafios e riscos que não devem ser ignorados. A inteligência
artificial shouldn't be ignored. Artificial intelligence can be described as disruptive innovation. And as Pope Francis said in the first part of his speech, to the most industrialized nations, G7,
apenas instrumento semelhante a outro. Na realidade, trata-se sim de uma ferramenta atípica, sui generis, pois está dotada da capacidade de tomar decisões autónomas
that can make autonomous decisions without guaranteeing the neutrality of the technique, given that this algorithm, the way the algorithm works is not neutral, and
o seu fundamento ético, do qual apenas o ser humano é garante. As constatações das instituições são hoje inumeráveis. Permitam-me dois exemplos.
Allow me to give you two examples I saw recently, and I've got to do with robotics. On the one hand, the viability of remote operations, and that is, doctors could perform operations remotely. and this has been tested in dental medicine, and they make very precise operations. And another example is, it has been confirmed the possibility of
de última geração capazes de ações militares em grande escala,
military operations
estratégias e táticas de guerra.
using war strategies. So artificial intelligence
a capacidade de resolver problemas complexos
has the ability to resolve complex problems, and it makes choices. These choices have an impact on us human beings, up to such an extent that the dignity and the freedom of the human being can be affected. One of the civilizational crossroads that our societies are faced with is that it's got to do with safeguarding the human rights, the ultimate dignity of each person, which for us is of the utmost importance. That explains why Pope Francis launched an appeal to the international community in the G7 for technological progress linked to artificial intelligence, accompanied by a regulatory framework for the development and the use of this tool. However, in the plenary session of the Academy of Sciences, Pope Francis wanted to make an appeal not only to the governmental leaders, but to all, specifically to academia and researchers. The Pope carried out a greater study about the impact of artificial intelligence on peoples and the international community, and it is as necessary as possible, because when we are going through crises, wars, threats to international order, that is why
mostra-se sobretudo favorável à necessidade do desenvolvimento de leituras mais complexas e integradas
of more complex interpretations on the phenomena of artificial intelligence, and the inauguration of the critical thoughts will only be possible based on a dialogue of disciplines,
entre os diversos saberes e os agentes do
conhecimento.
Uma reflexão inter e transdisciplinar que
transdisciplinary
da física à biologia,
physics, biology,
da climatologia à economia, associada ao franco debate
associated with the philosophical and political and social ethical basis. That shows how the position of Pope Francis on artificial intelligence is connected, is totally aligned with that presented by
Refiro-me, nomeadamente, às suas duas encíclicas de maior importância. A primeira sobre a proteção da casa comum, a Laudato Si, de 2015, e a segunda sobre a amizade social e a fraternidade universal, intitulada Fraternity, esta de 2020. A inteligência artificial estará
artificial intelligence will inevitably be in the center of the arguments that mankind will have to face, both in terms of ecological questions and that threatens our planet,
que está cada vez mais posta em causa ao nível das nações populares e também, infelizmente, da ordem internacional. Esta chamada em favor de conhecimento mais integrado, que nos permita enfrentar com sabedoria esta inédita época da história, deve-se dizer que se liga a processos virtuosos em curso. Bom exemplo é o documento Unidos na Ciência 2024, recentemente publicado pela Organização Meteorológica Mundial, órgão das Nações Unidas. Na introdução deste relatório, a Secretária-Geral da Organização, professora Andrea Celeste Saulo, observes the following: science and technology are not enough in the world, which is increasingly more complex. We have to embrace these sources of knowledge, experiences, and perspectives to create solutions together. Tem surgido sempre muito empenhado na proposta de uma abordagem. Has always been very committed to a multifaceted approach of the truth. Todo o seu pensamento está muito ligado a esta figura geométrica do poliedro, ao contrário de visões mais planas e unívocas da realidade. A resolução são os problemas novos e complexos. Exige que todas as linhas de conhecimento interteçam, aprendam a colaborar entre si para estabelecer uma cultura onde sejam necessárias as soluções integradas e abrangentes. Num contexto público, não é apenas formado por diferentes disciplinas, mas é chamado a reunir e a permitir a participação de todos os componentes sociais,
and to bring about the participation of all with particular attention to the peoples and those who are excluded. Problems concerning us should include everybody in their consideration. So the ability to solve complex problems.
Como seria possível gerir uma ferramenta tão única e
manage such a single and such an important tool? You mustn't forget that artificial intelligence allows a greater impact on all human actions. We are talking about a cognitive and industrial revolution. This is absolutely massive. How is it possible to launch artificial intelligence without a new culture, a new humanitarianism can be born at the same time? For you researchers, this is an historic time. It includes horizons of great responsibility, leveraging the scientific paradigms in the way to design the world in the future. Today, it shows that it is necessary to extend the horizons of analysis of reality. And that is why you are the protagonists of this new culture, where humanism is not being ignored, but is being reactivated without arrogance, but with humility. Because the knowledge of others, each person's reasons are essential to reach a vision of peace that goes beyond the sum of the truths. The task ahead is fundamental. The future of the community must be harmonious and become harmonious by way of the present. And this is only possible with high ethical standards and the great scientific and technological progress that artificial intelligence will not be a drawback in terms of human rights and in terms of the emergence of a brutal competitiveness
sobre os mais fracos e a eficiência a todo custo tomada como única lei do mundo.
With the strongest bidding against the weaker.
O apelo do Papa Francisco e de outras vozes autorizadas do mundo que pedem nesta hora uma convergência a favor do
convergence for the common good.
Da inteligência artificial.
You have to see you have to use the benefits of artificial intelligence
e da sua dignidade possam constituir verdadeiramente uma força de progresso histórico.
Be a force of historical progress. Thank you very much.
Deste desígnio da história do futuro julgar-se com a sabedoria
e também this history of the future together with wisdom, we've invited 4 PhD students from the Studies of Culture of the Faculty of Human Sciences of the Católica University. We would like to greet these students coming from different places in the world. From India, Ashuma Kumar. She has a master's in performance studies in the Netherlands. She was a performer, art curator, and creative producer in the cinema, theater, and applied visual arts from Slovenia. We've got someone with a master's and Slovenian studies from the University of Ljubljana. Her PhD project is about feminist visual arts in Portugal and Slovenia, in contemporary art. From Portugal, Teresa Feinholz. She has a degree from the Munich University with a thesis on literary study on Victorian police stories. From Brazil, we've got Tals Alegrim, a PhD and studies interaction between culture, history, literature, and music in the neoliberal age. Let's take advantage of our speakers. Please be welcome, and let's start with the questions. Hello. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. First of all, thank you. This was a very interesting conversation. I have a question that started with Alexandre. It was further developed with Carlos, but involving all those addresses, and it got its shape when we saw the Alberto Queiroz poem. It was Álvaro de Campos' poem. But there are some keywords that were interesting. He said that ChatGPT is what we want to be, but will never be able to be. What modernity promises, but will never fulfill. And my question will be, I would like to have your opinion on the matter. At the end of the day, the reaction we currently have to AI reveals our anxieties and expectations and the crisis about modernity. At the end of the day, this can be interpreted as a metaphor of our relationship with science, our expectations and anxieties, as Rodolfo said, in a puzzling way. At the same time, we have promises of human development with AI, but there's also a perspective of control. And at the same time, there is this attempt to overcome something that is negative. That's what William said, with extreme negativity, which is death and also denying our own body. So I would like to invite you to tap into this relationship with science, the role of science in modernity, and how this is present in our relationship with AI. The interpreter apologizes, but the speaker read his question, and this was not made available to the interpreters, and we did our best. I hope you can understand. You're addressing the question to the entire panel. Yes. Who would like to kick off? Appoint someone. So let's do this in alphabetical order. I'm not sure if I fully understood the question, says the speaker, but as I heard the different presentations, there was always a question that was coming up. We all know, we all understand, and we're almost given this notion that AI is extremely powerful. And exactly because of that, because it is extremely powerful, it can be used for good with a capital B or with a small b, and for evil also with capital E or not. But the question that was popping up in my mind was that human intelligence has the same features. We have examples of the use of human intelligence that shows an extreme creativity with Leonardo da Vinci, Einstein, and many others. But then we also have the opposite. We have people like Hitler, Stalin, or someone whose name I cannot remember. He was the president of Uganda some years ago. Our so-called human intelligence can also be used in these two extremes. So this is not a feature of AI alone. What concerns me in particular is that we are selling AI not as a tool, being a tool, it's something that in principle we master, or as an agent that has decision-making powers. But when we come to decision-making, this is present in these two universes, in human intelligence and in artificial intelligence. I don't see a big difference between the two. And just like it is very difficult to control the exaggerations of the natural human intelligence, we will probably be faced with the same difficulties in the case of artificial intelligence, and we will have to manage it, as we say in English. Will we be able to do it adequately? I don't know. The history of humankind shows that the management of our own intelligence has not proven to be the best sometimes. So this issue, it is difficult to separate, and we don't know, well, I don't know to which extent can AI go. I know how far human intelligence has gone. And this is fascinating and is both fascinating and scary for me. And I don't know what will AI reach. So I cannot have a knowledge based opinion. I can have an emotions-based opinion, but I don't have enough knowledge to have an opinion about that. Carlos, would you like to add something? I would like to add 3 aspects. Álvaro de Campos, artificial Álvaro de Campos. That's intriguing. How the machine captures the style and gives us credible poetic words. And this raises something that is very interesting. For the machine, that is language alone. But we believe we are more than language. The way we express ourselves. Language is extremely important. We sometimes believe that language conditions us, that we cannot say everything we are. And Professor Quintanilha says Einstein believes that is the case. So there's a philosophical issue that is deeper. Can this be considered an object with a consciousness of the world? This is a problem that we are faced with. As Fernando Pessoa said, the poet is a faker, he fakes his pain, and the AI machines pretend they are grief, the grief they never felt, and grief involves pain. May I? Yes, of course. Regarding science and the power of science in the world. Of course, science is important in the world, although not everybody understands this. But science is here and there. It is in our pockets. A simple mobile is advanced physics. Or when we do an MRI, that's advanced quantum physics. And we live in a paradox. Although it's very advanced science, very few can understand it. So science looks like something magical, and ignorance prevails. And Sagan foresaw this last century, where high knowledge and high ignorance will explode in our faces. Maybe this is happening, but this problem cannot be solved by science. Science gives us the means for progress. Progress exists in knowledge. A progress in humankind is a human matter. Without science, we are lost, but we're not saved by science alone. Regarding the body and death, this was also touched upon by us all.
É evidente que nós ignoramos a morte para viver, mas a morte está aí.
Of course, death is here, and death is part of life. I will say this like this, because death is essential for the biological evolution to happen. We are just part of a species, and species change. And in order for new qualities to appear, someone must die. And I find some solace in that. Life truly continues when the individual dies. For life to continue, the individual must die. So I don't believe that what we do with different ways of escaping death. Now the novelty is technology, but this was shown, several companies trying to sell us eternal life. We've seen this before many times in the past. I don't buy in. I don't want to be eternal. Maybe some of my books will be eternal, if we're lucky. So this final utopia of transhumanism, there's no death, because now humanity is in this fluid eternal spirit, which is AI. It is the utopia of all utopias, and it's not accomplishable. William, I believe it's now your turn. I'm sure that Tals also wants to hear your opinion. And now, thinking about Carl Sagan and death and grief and mourning.
Sorry, I'm going to shift back to
Eu vou passar para inglês.
Just a quick note on this, right? So, since the modern period, philosophers, intellectuals have found it irresistible to interpret ourselves in the light of the latest technology of the era. So, Hobbes was referred to earlier. Hobbes referred to the human being, the human self, as akin to a watch, right? So the modern philosopher likes to think of the human being as a machine. And what machine? Well, the more advanced machines of the era. So Hobbes said, you know, our heart is like a spring in a watch. Human beings are kind of like these machines driven by the mechanical, basic mechanics studied in modern physics. Later thinkers, Freud, others, used steam, pneumatic pressure, like your build up desire and so forth in the body, right? And now we're told, surprise, surprise, in the computer era, in the era of artificial intelligence, in fact, we're computers. And human beings just happen to be, in the words of Marvin Minsky, one of the pioneers of AI, machines made of meat, or computers made of meat. I think we should view with a certain amount of skepticism this attempt to understand ourselves in the light of a creation that we've made that is essentially a tool. Right? A computer is a computational tool, a steam engine is a tool to get transportational tool or whatever. That really runs the risk of diminishing and reducing us to some kind of functional artifact and perhaps robbing us of those aspects of ourselves that don't fit neatly into the machine paradigm or the computer paradigm. And so perhaps one of the dangers of the sort of more intangible ethical dangers about AI is not just, disinformation, autonomous weapons, and those things, which are very serious, but also that maybe we end up misunderstanding our own nature by assimilating ourselves to AIs. I mean, the most exaggerated version of this is, I think, the Kurzweil view that the chatbot that reproduces your informational content literally is you. It's you living forever in the cloud. This is a kind of, I think, losing a grip on the distinction between you as an embodied, living, mortal animal and you as a set of data that can be copied and reproduced on servers somewhere.
Rodolfo, muito brevemente, dado que a pergunta foi endereçada aos quatro.
Rodolfo, we'll have to be brief because the question was addressed to the four of you. Maybe let me add that when we talk about mourning, the mourning, it's an option to forget or to choose to alienate ourselves. When my dad passed away, I allowed my body to feel the mourning, and for 3 months I didn't write anything, I didn't open up my computer, and I was drawing to feel throughout the days, to draw lines alone that were changing with my recovery. And after some time, this was seen by a fashion designer, and she did her collection based upon that. It is a creative mourning. What I have to say is the following. We cannot confuse the permanent attempt to speculate and to take financial advantage with apps. That's one thing.
com as nossas
we will always be abreast with
coisa.
our own
Outra
weaknesses
coisa
and
é
frailties,
realmente aquilo que nós podemos
but
decidir,
something else is
se
what we
queremos
can
alienar-nos ou não.
decide
Portanto, é por isso
whether
que a
we
questão que eu
choose
falava
alienation or
da
not.
regulação, portanto, não
That's
sou só
why I
eu,
was
portanto,
talking
o Paulo
about
Mexer, que é a
regulation,
Olga, que me fez pensar,
and I
mas
wasn't the
o
only
Yuval
one.
disse recentemente
And
que, ok, quando se fala
Yuval
destas
said
coisas,
recently
vamos pelo menos
that when we
regular
talk
quando estamos
about
a falar com
this,
outro sujeito,
we
temos a
should
certeza que não é
regulate
uma
that
máquina.
when
Porque
we
isso é a
interacting
base
with someone
da
else,
nossa
we
saúde mental
are
e a
sure
base da
it's
nossa
not a
alimentação.
machine, because that's the basis of our mental health and democracy. So that's the singularity that you were talking about, Talsh. Thank you so much for your question, Teresa.
Boa noite.
Hello.
Queria também agradecer aos
I would also like to thank the speakers for your presentations
e pelas intervenções e perspectivas tão diferentes
and the
sobre
different
inteligência
perspectives
artificial.
that you
Eu tinha
shared
uma questão
on
para o professor Carlos
AI.
Filhais.
I have a question for
Em
Professor
relação
Filhais
à questão da
regarding
inteligência e o que
what
é
is
criatividade.
intelligence and
Nós vimos que a inteligência
creativity.
artificial
We've seen that
certos contextos mais
AI,
complexos
in
consegue
certain
resolver
more
problemas
complex
que a inteligência
contexts,
humana não consegue.
solves problems that the human
Mas, por outro
intelligence
lado,
is unable
em
to.
certos contextos
But on the other hand,
criativos, a inteligência
in more
artificial só
in a more
consegue
creative
funcionar
context,
com input humano.
AI can only
Essa
work with a
lógica,
human
eu
input.
percebi que inteligência
So,
artificial
based
não
upon
consegue
that
existir num
logic,
vácuo,
my
sem
understanding is
intervenção
that
humana.
AI cannot exist
Então, a minha questão
in a
é
void
se
without the human
essa
intervention.
lógica se pode
So,
mesmo
based
dizer
upon
que
this
a
logic,
inteligência artificial
can we truly
tem a
say that
capacidade de ser
AI
criativa
has the
ou
capacity
se é
to be
só uma ferramenta de
creative,
imitação
or
humana?
is it only
E
a
se
tool
sim, se for
imitating
esse o caso,
what is human?
porque é que
And
nós
if that
temos
is the
tanto
case,
medo de sermos
why are
substituídos
we
pela
so
inteligência
afraid
artificial?
to be replaced by AI?
Pergunta.
Good questions. Shall I start right away? Because they were addressed to me. The question is, what is to be intelligent and what is to be creative? And there isn't a single nor an easy definition. Different people understand intelligence as something different. And certain things that we call intelligence, machines can do them, as well as certain things that we call creative. But they have been done by us, these machines, out of our own willingness to fulfill that purpose, to know ourselves. Maybe all the science, and we talk about the knowledge of the universe, but we are more interested in knowing ourselves. And AI goes back to this question. In order to know ourselves, we are trying to develop a digital twin, and this is talked about these days. And the questions about who we are better defined. They become narrower and narrower, but they have not been solved yet. Machines work with our own orders, and in order to give questions, they have all our heritage. Well, when we say all our heritage, it's what's available on the internet, because many companies do not disclose where their machines were trained. It is curious and unavoidable to give answers similar to human answers because they have swollen up the human repertoire. In education, we're also permanently absorbing the human repertoire, but the machine does this in a limited way. It only uses language, it doesn't have the memory of the body, but they do it faster than us. And ChatGPT, a supercomputer, learned everything in 2 months. And it's not there in its memory. No, it will consider the probabilities of connecting words, and it will develop a speech that sounds human to us. Well, is it intelligent? It is as intelligent as the repertoire we've created. What can we add? Is it creative? I would say yes, because cultural creativity is what? To use the repertoire or the heritage, I think it's a better word, and change something, but keeping tradition. So this is what they are doing. What about gender? And when we have people like Shakespeare and in science, Einstein, and suddenly with what we cannot truly understand, that we call inspiration, they have a vision, an imagination that is fabulous, both in art as well as in science. They both are united by imagination, a lot more than we believe. And this was done by my fellow panelist. And we are discussing this question with AI. Can something be close to a genie? Apparently, it doesn't seem at all the case. But this cannot allow me to say that what we call a genie, and that is something that machines will never achieve. We need to see this, and we need to be careful with all the limitations that we know as we walk down this road. Although I believe this artistic genie is not reachable because of the body, the social heritage, and also consciousness. We haven't talked about that. What we believe is the free possibility to decide, and we don't have one mechanism, but there are several proposals. We don't know where it comes from, the I, and to take decisions. We need consciousness, and we don't even know what is our consciousness. How could we know a possible machine consciousness? And art has this feature of taking us to imagined worlds. And this means that if they're imagined, we're always there.
Thank you very much, Carlos. Thank you very much, Teresa. There you've got the mic. Can you? You get the mic.
So I have a question for Rodolfo. Thank you very much for talking about your art. It was extremely interesting to hear about the processes that have led to it. That brings me to my question about the changing role of the artistic creative process. Because with traditional mediums like painting and sculpture, you can become very consumed with the final product, with the painting or sculpture we go to see in a gallery or museum exhibition. But there is a huge interest in the process itself, and with the rise of social media, we've seen like artists are sharing more and more of behind the scenes. It has become sort of a norm. But with AI being involved in creation of art, the process has changed. It has become almost shortened, anticlimactic. So if you can talk a little bit about what you think about that, the changing role of the process, the development on the AI.
I will try the best.
Podes falar em português, sim, nós temos tradução simultânea.
Então, eu vou-te responder, respondendo também
So I'm going to answer because the question of creativity is central. In my case, I disagree that artificial intelligence can be creative, because all the artistic movements that were created by political will, by feminism, for example, Dadaism, and so it's an emotional political movement of society. So what we can do with AI, and when we talk about AI, we're talking about the growth of computing. So I think that the machine's doing the same thing that we do. So
todo o resultado do machine
the
learning
whole,
vem com os dados, não é, que nós estamos a mastigar,
so we have put in data, and data on their own do not have political wishes, don't have political wills, don't have political desires. They're not going to create a feminist movement, data movement. They're not. And so for me, this is out of the question that artificial intelligence can be creative in the way that we can. I'm not talking about artistic creativity, but as you saw, I work with software and I worked for the last 20 years, and I've worked with technology, and I've created works that used a primary intelligence, a computer, until an artificial, more advanced artificial intelligence. So what I consider is that I wish I could, and that's I made the code with ChatGPT. I would like to move forward with art, with the artistic ideas I have. I would like things to go faster, and artificial intelligence could help us to move forward with this, with our human art. Creative processes only occur with errors, and errors are very important here because we are talking about the alienation of grief. But if we alienate the error, we are not going to be creative. So for me, one of them, the work that I received created award was called Lighters, because there was an error in the light, and so that's the way it came to life. And so one of the processes in the creative process is the question of prompt. I'm going to create an image, and it'll appear. Well, we are going to, as I said in other conferences, that art created by artificial intelligence that we see in the social networks is sort of fast food art. It's art created and thought and forgotten in 2 seconds. And so we are going to have many different ways to look at artificial intelligence. And what I defend is that if we are to develop an interdisciplinary process, if we look at the reality that we have today, that is data information, when we use AI to help us and to understand the reality through another lens, for example. And so this is the way forward. Thank you, Rodolfo. Thank you, Medea. You have the floor now. We don't have much time left, so I would appreciate it if you could be as concise as possible.
Challenging to hear some of the perspectives, which I realize Portugal has a very different sense of relationship to AI compared to the Netherlands, which I believe is a bit more pro working with AI and thinking with AI. And so I think my question primarily to Rodolfo and William, I think mainly because I sense that there was resistance to a certain kind of relationship building. I was thinking along the lines of what Marshall McLuhan said about machines being an extension of the body, and this obviously is during the Industrial Revolution, but I'm thinking even way back when humans realized how we could create fire, which is by creating through tools that are existing outside our bodies. This goes way back into before antiquity. And so do you think the resistance to AI either is forgetting that we have always depended or had an extension of ourselves outside of us, or is it commenting on some kind of human arrogance? Yes, yeah, that's my question.
William.
Thank you. I guess I wouldn't say that I am resistant to AI per se. I used AI in the creation of the PowerPoint slides. I mean, I felt, for certain tasks, it seems inescapable, right? In modern life, summarizing work meetings. I mean, there's a variety of tasks in which it seems like this could be an indispensable tool to free us for activities that we find inherently rewarding, fulfilling, right? I mean, how much of our life do we spend in activities that we don't really want to be doing? I was shocked once to hear the provocation. Imagine if you could add up all the time you've spent since the advent of the internet logging in and out of systems, right? We've lost like precious lifetime that's never going to come back by us logging in, forgetting our passwords, blah, 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 blah. If we could have AI systems that could save us this kind of merely instrumental activity to free us up for intrinsically valuable activities, I think this would be a huge benefit for us. And maybe one of the promises of AI sort of automating various aspects of work is this. However, where I do start to worry is when AI comes to substitute for people in the activities that we see as intrinsically rewarding themselves. So Kai-Fu Lee talked about AI freeing us up to love one another. That's a more positive vision than AI mimicking love, right? Or AI substituting for human beings in, activities that make up the fabric of what we find most meaningful in our lives. So I guess AI is a provocation to think about what activities really matter to us as people, and most meaningful to us, and can we enhance our activities with AI, or just protect them from encroachment from AI, and then use AI to automate or outsource or assist us with things that we would rather not have to deal with. I think that would be a more optimistic take.
Obrigada, Aishwarya. Obrigada a todos. Nós gostaríamos
Thank you very much. Thank you much, everybody. We would really like to continue this conversation. But there is a question, and this is the last question I'm going to ask. How do you understand that from that a conversation has to come to an end? And the answer is time. And time is not like chewing gum. You can't spread it. And so Harari was already mentioned here in the book Nexus Launches as this rhetorical question. So we are so wise because we are so self-destructive. And so we talked about this. So Unite in Canal Mendonça talked about the geometric figure of the polyiron, and I have here, not in technological terms, but a character, and this character is on a cobblestone, in Lisbon cobblestone, we all know them, and we have this, and here is a little saint, and the screen is on a bubble, and so what we understand is that, it's in the bubble, and so this artificial intelligence can substitute people, so that is to sort of alienate us from what's fundamental. Just like Camoens, as I began, we have to try out new things and study the books, and so this combines the two intentions. So to think with our heart and think with our brain can be a step to forward to guarantee that AI can create creativity and cultural heritage, and for the common good that Pope Francis mentioned through the Cardinal. And so I would like to thank the audience for your presence, and everybody who has been listening through streaming. Thank you very much. We're going to conclude now with the Secretary General, Czarnecka Konopnicki, and so we're now going to conclude with the key Czarnecka Mihailovic. Thank you very much.
Wow. What an afternoon. Dear colleagues and friends, I feel very humble to say a few words at the very end of this very stimulating, thought-provoking conversation that the Europa Nostra Heritage Hub in Lisbon, led by Centro Nacional de Cultura, organized here in this innovation creative hub. I just, on behalf of Europa Nostra, and Europa Nostra is the European voice of civil society committed to cultural heritage. We are very proud to have the Centro Nacional de Cultura as our country representation. I just want to congratulate you for what you have organized here. I think you have, as usually, whatever you do, you somehow you show the way. You show the way, and in a sense, this is in fact the first public event organized by the Europa Nostra Heritage Hub in Lisbon by Centro Nacional de Cultura with the city of Lisbon. And I was, this afternoon when this light was going on, okay, now it's dark, but I thought, gosh, the city of light, and then the organization that is, and that hub that is somehow the hub of enlightenment. And bringing so many voices, connecting so many, indeed, leaders from the academic world, leaders from the artistic world. You even connected New York, the United Nations, with the Rome and the Vatican. We heard also the political and spiritual leaders. We heard the voices of the young generation. And basically, sort of something that was your mission, Centro Nacional de Cultura, from the very beginning, basically saving democracy. Because you were born when Portugal was not a democracy, so you were fighting to save democracy through culture. So now in 2025, where we are entering, so we have to save democracy still. You have recently celebrated the 50th anniversary of the revolution and living in democracy, but it's never we can take it for granted. And we have to save humanity as well. And so all this conversation is showing us that artificial intelligence, yes, it is a tool. Yes, it can also help in many ways humanity, but it threatens also in amazing quantity the democracy and the values of our humanity. And I always say, as a heritage organization, that today probably our intangible heritage, which is our values, democracy, our humanity, that's probably the most endangered heritage of all. And this is why we need to get together. And why we have this Europa Nostra Heritage Hub in Lisbon, not only in Lisbon, we have it in Krakow, in Athens, in Nicosia, tomorrow in Venice, in Belgrade, in the Caucasus. We need to connect the dots, we need to connect the humanity, and we have to continue, having that in our hands and not letting it out. But what I heard from you, because as somebody who is so reluctant to embrace the artificial intelligence, your words when you said, let us not forget that human intelligence has also caused horrors in our history. So one is, we need a good blend of artificial and ancestral intelligence, but something that serves the good and the public good, and it's something that we all have to take part in. And just to end with Europa Nostra, recently, only 2 weeks ago, we had our summit in Bucharest, and we organized there also a hub that was dedicated to the necessity of championing digital transformation, ethically responsibly digital transformation for and with cultural heritage. And it is today that we have published the call to action in support of this responsible digital transformation. I very much count on our hub here in Lisbon to translate it in Portuguese, to disseminate it. It's something that we now have to pass to the leadership of Europe, leadership of the European Commission, Parliament, European Council. We will have Antonio Costa at the head of European Council. We need to take it in our hands, and we need personalities that you all who will guide us in that process of demobilization, once again, of using artificial intelligence as a power of good. And once again, thank you. Thank you on behalf of Europa Nostra. And thank you all of you who came here.
Até foi bom terminarmos com a Janesca, com esta inspiração, este entusiasmo. Que bom! Que bom!
This is the end, and we've been very enthusiastic. Thank you very much.